Hey guys, welcome back.
Happy Sunday.
So, this next topic is something that I was thinking about last week because, as you may know, I'm into photography. That's my hobby. And most recently, I've been into 35 millimeter film photography, having a lot of fun with that. But I picked up these two Pentax K1000 cameras that, it's a 40, 50-year-old camera and all mechanical, not a lot of places that you can get those fixed, get them serviced. But I went out to the internet because I thought, I want to get these serviced, make sure everything's working right on them. And so I went to the internet and Googled this camera and where I could get it serviced. And what it came up with, the number one result, and you could do this yourself, is a guy in Tennessee named Eric Hendrickson. I don't mind saying his name because it's out there on the internet. And he's been fixing Pentax cameras since 1969. He works out of his house, and if you look on Reddit or wherever, everybody who has these Pentax cameras says that's the guy that you send your Pentax K1000 to get it fixed. And I thought, here's a guy who's been doing this for 50 years, and that's his thing. He is the person for getting this particular camera fixed, and he does it out of his house, by the way. So it's really profound. And I thought, what is my thing? What is my legacy? This year I'm going to be 45, and I think about this a lot. My job that I'm doing, it's a job. I've been doing it for 20 plus years. My kids, love my wife. There's a lot of things about my life that I really, really, really appreciate. But what is my legacy? What, when I'm 80 years old, what am I going to look back on and say, that is the thing in my life that was my thing? That was my thing that I did. For Eric Hendrickson, it's Pentax K1000 cameras. When I look back on my life, what is my thing going to be? What are people going to know me for? And it's something I think about a lot. So, Z, what do you think? Do you think about that?
You tell me a little bit about this story with the individual who fixed that particular type of camera sparked the thought for me. But I guess because I'm earlier in my stage of building my career and things like that, it wasn't at the forefront of my mind. That being said, since we had our discussion in regards to it, I kind of pondered what I would want my legacy to be, right? So I think before you can have, in my opinion, before you can have a legacy, you have to think about what you want your legacy to be. Now, with our youngest one, it took us a while to conceive, about maybe 2 years or so. And I remember in the process of being heartbroken when I would have a negative test, I think at that time I thought a little bit about what my legacy would be. And in my mind, I had two beautiful bonus babies, but I thought about there wouldn't be any of my DNA left on this earth, once I passed away. And so to some degree, I feel like having a child who hope I hope he becomes a kind, caring, warm individual and loves us as he gets older. But to a degree, I think about children as a legacy, I guess. And I also think about the little things, right? Sometimes it doesn't have to be, donating millions to an orphanage. Sometimes it could just be the individual who remembers, that you did something kind for them. They may
Right.
not know your name. They may not, but they just remembered that there was this person who was really kind to them. My mom always tells me this story. When I was born, unfortunately, my dad couldn't make the delivery, but she talked about how much pain she was in. She had a natural birth, and there was this physician. She doesn't remember his name. She kind of remember what he looks like, but she just remembered the little things as far as him helping her to dress herself and just how kind and warm he was. Haven't seen him. I'm what, 38. She hasn't seen him in 38 years, but she always recalls that, in a very vulnerable and painful time for her. This individual, this doctor who was just kind to her, just helped her put on her clothes. And so those are the little things. He may not be privy or remember who she was, but I feel like when you pour into this world, you are kind, you do kind things, you will have a legacy. It may not be a school that has your name plastered on it, but for me, and everyone's different, I don't think I necessarily need that. So I think legacy may have a different appearance for different individuals, I guess.
No, I think that's right. I think that some things like having a school named after you. So I mean, some of those things to me are a little bit more of a vanity thing than what I would be interested in. I want to have something where I can look back and say it was difficult. It required skills that I uniquely possess. Things that it's something where it's not just something anybody can do. It's leveraging what I know I'm good at doing, and it made a difference. And obviously, our relationship, the kids, those are all things that are very, very, very valuable for me. But I don't necessarily look at those like a legacy. I feel like those are just important parts of my life. I don't feel like it's something that I set out to do. Right.
So when you're saying legacy, you want something not just unintentionally someone remembers. So you want, kind of like what you just stated, a skill or craft that you really honed in on.
Right.
That was a contribution to the world in some way.
Right. Like
Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Like I want to, for example, I want to go out and photographically document all of a particular type of building or something like that. So something where I'm making a contribution.
I was gonna say, do you know exactly what you want your legacy to be? And by that I mean, do you want it to be like through photography or? And if you don't have an answer, that's okay too. I'm just wondering, because I think that will set the tone or allow you to create that legacy.
Yeah, I feel like creating visual things is what makes me happy.
Creating visual things.
I feel like that's what makes me happy. I love creating our channel. I love photography. I love videography. That stuff makes me, creating content is a lot of fun.
Okay. So maybe finding a way how you can use those skills to contribute to society is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's got to have, it's got to be something that I feel like is valuable and has a social purpose.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can see that. I think it looks a little different for me. With my work that I do, granted, I get frustrated, I get burnt out sometimes, a lot, but I feel like it gives me an opportunity sometimes to be helpful to others.
I feel like I'd be extremely gratified on a regular basis if I did what you do.
You would think so, but sometimes doing what I do, you deal with a lot of personalities and you work within kind of corporate system, so to speak, so you are not able sometimes to do all that you would like to, or you don't have all the resources. And some individuals are just very difficult, all right, in their expectations or their desires. So some days it is very gratifying. I feel like I'm making my contribution to society. And other days I'm like, what is the purpose of this, right?
I remember coming out of residency, you mentioned that a couple times, like how it didn't feel as satisfying serving kind of a middle class population as it did back in residency when you were working at the clinic in the bad portion section of town.
Well, it's because when you do help an individual, they're really, coming from, very little funds or finances, or sometimes poor social circumstances. So when you make a change, you really feel like you're doing something. That being said, I had to learn how I can contribute to my current patient
Yeah.
population, right? And so I've kind of, I now understand a little bit of how I can contribute to them. Because just because you have good insurance and, the funds doesn't mean that you're not needing help, right?
Sure.
Whether mental help or whatever it may be. Um, so it's just understanding my patient population a little bit. I think initially starting, that was a bit frustrating. And if you ask me at that time, I don't know. I thought I was just showing up to get paid. It wasn't really me contributing. Currently, I do think that that I am helping others. Now, some days I'm just like, but I do think I'm able to contribute overall. But I just think it's the name of kind of what my job is, right?
I was going to say, it seems like recently you don't complain so much about the lack of satisfaction like you did initially.
Yeah, it's different, I think. And I also think it having a baby kind of helped with that too. Also,
Takes the focus off of work a little bit.
correct. That first year you're focusing on the kiddos, and you're still focused on the kiddos, right? With a younger child in the mix, in that regards. But I do see what you're saying for someone with a job like yours, and you don't get out of the house often. Yeah. I can see where the thought would run across your mind of how do you be a contribution to society or create a legacy outside of your children.
Yeah.
Right.
And just in case you guys are new to the channel, I'm an actuary. I work from home, and if you don't know what an actuary does, we manage risk.
What does that mean? I tell other people that, like, what does that mean?
Well, so I work in pension, and the risk in pension is that you're going to live to get the next check. Yeah. Which unfortunately is true. But anyway, so we manage risk. We figure out how much something's going to cost that hasn't happened yet. That usually involves mortality or accidents and things like that. But there is a social purpose there. But for me, it's just a lot of being on the computer and not leaving the house, and I've just been doing it forever, and I don't feel like I don't feel like it's the thing when I look back when I'm 80 years old that I'm going to say, aha, I did that. It just doesn't have
You're
that ring.
Awesome actuary.
It does. Yeah, it doesn't have that ring to it. So I'm still searching. Now, Z, tell me this. Do you feel like your thing for you, do you feel like it's going to be in medicine somewhere?
It could be related to medicine, but I don't think medicine is just my thing. I think medicine is my thing for now. I would hope that my legacy consists of multiple things, right? Being a mother, being a wife, a daughter, being a physician. But I don't think it has to be limited to one thing. When I think about my legacy, right? I don't think it's limited to just one thing. I also enjoy, to some degree, I'm also anxious, but I enjoy public speaking and, giving back to younger girls. And I'm just in a time in my life where that's not really conducive to my schedule, right? With three younger kiddos and work and all of that. But I don't think this is the end of what I have to contribute to society, right? I think sorry to cut you out, prior to meeting you and, living in this area, I think that was always something that was that I'm compelled to do, right? I was telling you, I was involved with organizations, one where you would read to like a first grader, who, maybe struggling academically. You would go once a week. I enjoyed that, right? And then I also did I was a volunteer with this refugee program where you would visit the home, and I was helping this mother who had 4 daughters, and I would have lunch with them. I would help with homework. I would help them figure out, sorting out forms or interview work. I just kind of became, a part of the family. And I really enjoyed those things for the time that I did it. So I feel like I'm always an individual that feels compelled to do something. And this wasn't because at that time, because this was over 7-8 years ago, it wasn't because I wanted to, or I was actively thinking about creating a legacy. It was just because I felt the need to do something that was productive outside of myself. And I hope to some degree that we all are compelled to do something that is outside of ourselves, that's not necessarily benefiting us. And when I say that, we're not looking to get compensated or get our names plastered somewhere, I hope for all of us, giving back to others in some form or some manner is who we are, right? That's what I hope for with my fellow humans. But anyway, for me, it's just always a part of who I am. And I would actively, I told you when I first met, I was trying to find, organizations that I can volunteer, but it was just going to be too exhausting with work and kiddos. And I was pregnant, after a month or two living here. So I don't know. I feel like this is not the end. Is ultimately what I'm saying. So I think my legacy hopefully consists of multiple things. Yeah.
On that note, we're going to end the video.
Yes.
And we want to hear in the comments, what do you think? What's your legacy? What do you think about you'd like to accomplish? And what do you want people to remember you for? Let us know.
And remember to like and subscribe down below. Talk to you guys later.